Hi everyone. Again, we are wrapping up with a series of Stone Island tours, but we're not done with the islands because there are a lot more to explore. But for now, let's deal with the Stone Island and make sure we see everything. Um, so where are we? In the previous tour, and well, you have been with me to the English Embankment. We spoke about the Trinity Bridge, right? So once in 1904 the Trinity Bridge was inaugurated, it connected the mainland, with the other islands, and you can see the bridge running just past Peter and Paul Fortress. This fortress on an island, right? And it runs past it, and it crosses many islands before it reaches the red pin, Kamenniy Island, which actually means Stone Island in English. So, and we are exploring the Stone Island. We Where we are now. Basically every tour I start with from this location just to make sure we understand where we are. We are actually on an island. We are now walking. I mean, Oleg is now walking on the stone bridge of Kamenny Bridge, and we're switching from the Aptekarski, the pharmacist island, to the stone island. To the right-hand side, there were some buildings that were the service buildings of the royal palace, by the way. But I would say up until the Soviet period, the island itself looked as just some sort of wilderness. It was basically woods and the stone embankment. Sorry, not the stone, but the sand embankment. There were buildings, like suburban residences, like summer residences of the nobility and the merchants, but it felt like you are somewhere far from the city, but you were not. Obviously, in the Soviet period, things changed, and there were built a lot of modern residential buildings, such as the one to the right. However, there is still a lot of architecture that survived. For example, this building, this with the three arched windows, is one of the service buildings of the former Romanov Palace on the Stone Island Palace. And we spoke about it. That was the first building on the island. Kind of, it set the tone, and it eventually attracted. So this is the Stone Island Palace, Kamenny Palace, and it attracted aristocracy. Obviously, a lot of aristocrats were given here the plots of land, still at times of even Peter the Great. So that's how it started. And aristocrats were given this land for free, but they had to build something there. It would be not so many families, but with time, closer to the 19th century, more aristocrats had built their summer residences there. And in the 19th century, for some reason, it would be more even merchants than aristocrats who decided to build themselves a summer residence on the Stone Island. So this is the example of a wooden architecture, because most buildings, especially in the 18th century, obviously would be just wooden country houses, and later on they would be rebuilt or destroyed. So, but we are not talking about the 18th century. We're not even talking about the 19th century. We're actually going to be, oh yeah, and by the way, you may have seen a sub boat over there, right? Hold on a sec. Sub is actually, it's a very popular kind of, activity in St. Petersburg because there are a lot of canals and rivers. And I remember seeing some suppers, even, I mean, subboards, even in the heart of the city in the Fontaine, which was really unusual to see. But most suppers would prefer to explore the Stone Island and the canals that run around these islands because it's quiet. There are no big boats. There are no tourists. And in general, I would say that the Stone Island is not a touristy area at all. At all. So the most tourists you can see there, they actually St. Petersburgers, and they come to the Stone Island just for a little breather and the peace and quiet, and also to get a little bit jealous you know, because of the, I would say, very expensive real estate that 99.9% of the city's population cannot afford. And this is the house we saw last time, but I thought you wouldn't mind seeing it again since I have found a little bit more footage for us. But I have just figured out that I got the settings wrong because you need to hear something. So hold on a minute. I just need to start sharing the video again. It's just gonna take me 10 seconds maximum. Um, yeah. So, house, wild house. So these are like summer house. It's not the house where people lived, uh, all year round. No, it was just the place for the summertime. And I told you why people tried to do everything to escape from St. Petersburg during the summertime because it was hot, because of all the waste and all the poop from the horses and all all the other garbage just was there lying on the embankments on the ground, and it would be dirty, it would be super smelly, and then it would be taken to the water. So just imagine what kind of stench was in the city. Stench, is that what you say, right? Well, it definitely was super stinky in St. Petersburg. So everyone tried to escape, and those who had enough money, they would come to the Stone Island because it was not too far. It was actually very close, but still felt like countryside, and it still does, which is an amazing thing. So, House Wild House. House Wild is a family who originally rented this plot of land. The land in itself belonged to one of the Romanov families, the Mecklenburg-Strelitz, and then they just well, you could rent a plot of land from them, and you could build a country house. I mean, a country house for yourself there. So the Housewild, what we know is that Housewild originally he was um, the one of the bakers who was a supplier of the royal court of the Romanov court, so the official supplier basically of the Romanov house, and he registered the house on his wife's name, which was a very common thing to do. And that's it basically. We don't know much about Housewife herself, so we know that they were they were Germans. That's what we know, and this is it. But what we know is that this is one of the first Art Nouveau houses built in St. Petersburg, and it's just super lovely, beautiful, recently restored, and we could have lost it for good. The thing is that in 2000, the Special Commission came to a conclusion that the house was all um, uh, well, like there was a super invasive and harmful mold in the house that by that time had already taken over the entire building, and the commission thought, decided, ruled that there was no hope and nothing could be done to save the building. But then, many years later, in 2010s, the house was purchased by a businessman, and the businessman, I don't even want to name him. I named him in the previous. I don't want to do that again. It doesn't matter. What matters is that, I mean, dirty money, but at least he restored the house, which in the Soviet time was used it was one of the resorts for the workers. The entire island was a big resort island for the workers of different facilities, and also it was also the official residences of the KGB. And it's still the same thing. No, obviously there are no resorts for the workers anymore. No, it's just that either on the South Island you can find either the official residences that belong to the office administration of the president, and they're obviously supervised. They're all taken care of, maintained by the FSB, right, the Federal Security Service of Russia, or those are just very expensive real estate that belong to some private entities or just some people. That's basically it. And we don't have, I have never been inside. We have a couple of photographs from the pre-revolutionary period, and the house was designed well, it was designed to resemble the English cottage style, I would say, and this is the living room. But it's definitely Art Nouveau at its best. You see the absolutely asymmetrical facade, a lot of smooth lines, the tiles, the stained glass. This photo, it's not mine. All these photos were taken from the archives. I have never been inside. But the amazing thing is that for some reason, during the Soviet period, when it was a resort, they decided to paint it yellow and uh, brown, which, w- well, didn't make sense, but a lot of buildings were repainted in the Soviet period, and we are not even sure why. I guess it just basically depended on what paint they had. That's it. So you see, this is the photo also from the internet, taken clearly before this 2015 restoration, something around that time. But even like this, the house looks quite impressive. But as I said, we don't really have good photographs. There are a couple of photographs taken before the restoration, such as this one. And as you can see, the house definitely lost a lot of its original details. There's almost no decorations. And I don't see the mold from here, but you kind of have an idea. So that mold, if it was, I mean, it must have been everywhere by now, by then, I mean. So, and after the restoration, as I said, well, the restoration has been covered solely by the private money, and it was extremely expensive and very accurate. Like, specialists claim it was one of the best restoration projects in St. Petersburg. So I guess it's a big deal. There are some photos I found online, so you can clearly see that the stained glass. Um, was restored at some point. There is steps, there are stairs. It's basically the same room we saw in the photographs. But I thought to myself that, well, there must be a way to see some interiors. And I remember that tons of Soviet movies were actually filmed in the Stone Island. And I would say whenever they wanted, I mean, the Soviet movies directors wanted to show Europe, wanted to show some, old Europe, they would go to the Stone Island. And yes, so what you see is the photograph taken at the set of Sherlock Holmes movies. Well, you must know of a lot of Sherlock Holmes movies, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson filmed in the Soviet period in Russia. And they were like 11 films altogether, and they are absolutely exceptional. They are so exceptional that so the actor Vasily Livanov, who played Sherlock Holmes, uh, well, his portrait can be found in the Sherlock Holmes Museum on Baker Street. This particular photo, by the way. Then I'm just providing here just so you don't think it's just me imagining things, which I'm sure you don't, but nevertheless, you can see that Livanov was given even the title of the member of the Order of the British Empire for the service to the theater and performing arts. So the British authorities claimed multiple times that Livanov's portrayal of Sherlock Holmes was one of the best in history. So I think it's like a big deal. So there is like I mean, just a big deal. And it's a very very good movies. They're very well done and filmed with good music and everything. So obviously in Russian, but you can find good translation as well because it's a really big deal thing. So, and some episodes were actually filmed in Stone Island, and yes, there also happened to be a little bit of the House Wild House featured in one of the episodes. So what I have decided to do just include very short videos, like even less than 1 minute long, of this house featured in several Soviet period movies. And this is the way we can actually see a little bit of the interiors. Obviously, changed for the, well, for the sake of the movies, but still the interiors, and you can recognize some. So I believe it's a, kind of a good way to at least make up to the absence of the photos because the house is so exceptional from the outside.
Запись филармоники только. Полгинеи, если доведете за 20 минут.
Жизнь текла моя в скачках и пирах, в картах и балах. Пронеслись года, и пришла беда.
The names of the movies doesn't, it's not really that important, but if you need, I may share the names of the movies in English. I didn't have time to do that, and it doesn't, well, again, as I said, that let's say there was a scene of a big dance hall, uh, but part of the scene was filmed like the small courtyard with the fountain, so it is believed to have been filmed in the house while house. Obviously, again, it was corrupted for different reasons, just to match, the style and everything, and the needs of the movie. But yes, you may have recognized some of the interiors for sure. Anyway, let's move on. So if we continue walking over there, just straight ahead, there will be the house of Vasily Schoene. Vasily Schoene was an architect, and he happened to be exactly that architect who created the Hauswald House and several other buildings. Grisha, turn down the volume, please. Thank you. And he happened to design several buildings in the area. And unfortunately, well, Oleg didn't go there, but I have photos, and I will explain why Oleg didn't go there because he was not allowed to. Because, well, what you see, this is the photo I found online. Um, I remember when I walked in the Stone Island, I could approach that area, but I guess now because of the situation, the security and everything, I guess this is not possible. So what you can see clearly a beautiful house that looks quite Art Nouveau-ish, right? It's true. But next to it, well, you see it's behind the fence. And also, I'm sure you see there is an interesting green booth, kind of a pavilion. That's for security. Um, Actually, exactly in that area, there are several old houses that are now within the Federal Security Service, and they kind of belong to the administration of the president. Yes. And it's been like this since the Soviet period. So they were the places where you know, the secretaries, the officials from Moscow would be coming, for summertime, for different, meetings. Yes, and the house that the Vasily Shona, the architect, built for himself, also is part of that uh, circus. And yeah, sorry for that. And I guess because of the situation, Oleg was not allowed to film there. So he said he wouldn't want to read, so he just turned around once he saw the guards, who clearly like told him with their face that he couldn't come, he couldn't show up with a gimbal. So he left, he turned around, and I think it was the right thing to do. Yeah, but I have photographs. So the photographs of the house built by Vasily Shone. I actually he also had designed several buildings in St. Petersburg itself, but um, I don't think I've ever been to any one of them. But the house he designed for himself was really lovely. Also Art Nouveau-ish, and I know for sure, judging by the dates, that he first built a house for housewives and then built a house for himself. And clearly, he must have been so happy with himself and what he had built for the housewife that he wanted to build something similar for himself. However, he never got to finish the house because he ran out of funds. He went bankrupt, and the bank took the house because he had nothing to pay for the debts. And unfortunately, this is how the story of the house ended. Well, in the Soviet period, again, as I said, it first became the resort for the workers, and then it became part of the KGB's residences, so to speak. They have this code name K4, whatever it means, K4. That's it. So and I think the Soviet officials had a very good taste. So they clearly occupied the most beautiful buildings. And speaking of this house, as you can see, there is also winter orchard. You can see to the right on the upper floor. I know that for a short period of time, it was the resort for the pregnant women, for the women workers of the factories that were expecting, and so they also had their resort. Amazing. Like we call it sanatorium, but you have the idea. So the resort. And I think what you can actually see are a lot of pregnant women standing there. So, but it was functioning for a very short period of time. I don't know. Maybe at some point they decided that pregnant women did not deserve any downtime. I'm not sure why they decided eventually to uh, close down that facility, or it's just highly likely that the Soviets wanted to have the Shona house so bad that they just kicked out the pregnant women, and I don't know where would they would be taken next to. But this is the photo of a Medusa head that used to decorate one of the facades. I mean, this Medusa is clearly on the blueprints, but it disappeared later on. I have been able to find this very, very bad, very, very low quality, low resolution photograph of the interiors. And it must be the study of Vasily Shone. I'm not sure. Um, but I'm not sure because, as I said, Schöne never really finished with the building. So it could be also somebody else's study in this house, but we don't really have much information with regards to what happened to this house after it was taken from Schöne by the bank. Anyway, so the house is still there. It's in a good condition. I can't vouch whether the restoration had been carried out fitting all the, meeting all the requirements of the scientific restoration. But as I said, well, better than nothing. Now, if we go, so now we are turning around, and if we continue walking straight ahead and then to the left, we can see, well, it's kind of private residence. They're just residential buildings, several cottages built one next to another, but they actually were, how shall I put it? They were actually, give me a minute, just want to make sure. All good. Yeah, hi everyone who has just joined us, by the way. Well, it's been recorded, so you can always catch up with the recording from my website or from my YouTube channel. So, again, this is the photo taken from Wikipedia, I believe. So basically, right now, what you can see, it's the modern buildings. They are like several cottages built one next to another. Some of them are old, some of them are new. I will explain what's going on here. This is the result, this is the aftermath of the reckless 90s when the country was going through this transition period from the Soviet Union to the Republic, Democratic Republic. Wow, who would have thought? Anyway, what was going on? So there actually in this plot of land, there were several summer houses that belonged to different families. For example, there was house that belonged to Peter Goeze, another foreign national that had a house for himself. Well, we have a little bit of the blueprints and illustrations, a lot of wooden architecture, as you can see. Looks like a chalet to me, to be honest. Um, Also, there are a lot of, I would say, German motifs in some of those houses. Well, it just was, well, a wooden building, quite, well, it was quite beautiful, but it was wooden. So definitely by the time of the Soviet Union, it had been in a pretty bad, pretty run-down condition. And for some time, it was just absolutely abandoned. There were also several other buildings with practically the same fate, unfortunately. And well, this one is in a much better condition, much better condition. So this one belonged to Goeze, Peter Goeze. We don't have much of the information, unfortunately. So, well, just one of the must have been a merchant at least. And his house, it was basically a wooden country house in the 70s. So the colored photo that I showed you of the wooden building, it was in the 70s. Then closer to the 90s, it dilapidated and was just like a very condemned building, basically on its own. Then next to it was standing this German, what do you call it? The Fachwerk style. Oh yeah, Fachwerk style building. So Fachwerk buildings, I'm sure many of you are familiar. It's this special kind of construction, how the walls were built, how the houses were built. So when you see this wooden box here, so it's kind of called Fachwerk design. I'm not going into details here. So it was very typical for Germany, was typical for also some other European countries. And this is a stylization, obviously. So Schwartz, also being a German, so he had this chalet and the tower. So this photo was taken in, I guess, early 1900s, and Schwartz was just Goethe's neighbor. The two buildings were standing one next to another, but well, as I said, the Goethe's house was, I would say, just staying there, destroying itself, and the same happened to the house of Schwartz. Just the same. You see, it was just standing on its own during the late Soviet period, and then in the 90s, these are the photos taken in the late 90s. You see, it's just a little bit of the tower left, and just some walls, some brick walls, no roof, no rooms, nothing, no decoration, nothing. You see, and over there, if you, so let's say you see the tower. To the right, you see the what's left of the house itself. You can see a little bit of the fachwerk there. You see the crisscross wooden bolts, and then to the right, in the right hand side, you see a kind of some building or a shed behind the trees. So that's part of the Goethe building. So in the 90s, it would be standing like this. In the 80s, it would be standing like this. These are the photos taken in the 90s. Uh, and eventually, someone purchased it in the 90s. And later on in 2000s, it was turned into this small residential complex. I don't know the name, but this is a very expensive real estate. Just super expensive. That's basically it. Stone Island has always been a very expensive place to live in. And you see there are several buildings on this in this compound. There were several other wooden buildings here, but there are not even photographs there. But what they were able to preserve some buildings at least. And yes, obviously they built for themselves this high fences, I mean tall fences, and you don't see much behind it, but at least this one is kind of transparent, so you can see at least something. I mean, well, kind of. Could have been worse, many would have this just big stone, um, 2 meter high, like 6 feet high, fences, and you would just only be able to see like the roofs and the spire. So I guess it's a much better situation. So we can see quite a lot. And well, yeah, there are some photos online. I've never been inside. I know no one there. Fortunately, yeah, so to the left side from here, you can find exactly this house of the house of Quartz and Goza. But we are going right. So I asked Oleg. So I basically told him, Oleg, don't mess with anyone. If they don't like you filming, just don't film. But other than that story with the Shona building, the rest is fine. And if we continue walking straight ahead, we will see once again this gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous Fallen Vader house. Fallen Vader was a co-owner of one of the textile companies. Also, he had his own uh, uh, atelier, which was one of the suppliers to the court. So Fallen Vader had, well, he was a German national, and he had enough funds to build such a summer house. It's clearly Art Nouveau, beautiful building, a little bit younger than the house of Hauswald. However, inside, well, the photos I have been able to find on the archives, it doesn't really make much sense because from the inside it looks very, I would say, classical, right? It doesn't look like Art Nouveau almost at all, but maybe this one looks a bit more Art Nouveau for sure, and this for sure looks very Art Nouveau. I like the idea of a lamp just uh, on top of the shirm. I like the idea a lot. Yes. And yes, this is the photo taken already in the 1920s. There was the research facility of children's diseases. And these are kids. It's one of them, I would say, hospital wards. So photo was taken in it was taken on the 16th of February, 1920. That's what it says. So the photo was signed. Yes. When the house was built, people gave it a nickname, Sugarloaf. I mean, if you take a look at the roof itself, like it's very, I would say it's different from any other roofs and spires you could see in the city. And it reminded people, by the way, this is the photo taken in the 1950s. These are also the workers, 1954. These are the workers of some factory walking around, and they're taking photographs next to this gorgeous Fallen Vader house. Yeah, there was also a bit of the fence that survived. And this photo was taken on one of the balconies of the Fallen Vader house. So it was somebody's, it was again one of those resorts for the workers. Yeah, and now it also belongs to a family of a politician from Saint Petersburg. I don't even want to bring their names because I'm sick just even thinking of it. But uh, why was it called a sugar loaf? Because of this. So the sugar, I think I've included photographs. I think they're just coming your way. So basically, it looks like the sugar loaves. That's how sugar used to be sold back in the days. So a sugar loaf. But in Russia, we call them sugar heads, like сахарная голова. But I know that in English it's sugar loaf. And I used to think it was just a Russian way of storing and transporting sugar. But actually, no. What I realized is that this was the way sugar actually came to Europe from the Arab world. I had no idea. So you see, yeah, so that's how people call it sugar loaf. Now you can only find the sugar loaves in the museums. So this is a photo taken in one of St. Petersburg museums. I also found it online, so I don't know much of it, or I don't really have any information. But yes, I can clearly see the resemblance between this house and the sugar loaf. Well, the only thing that kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of okay with at least that they invest. I mean, these proprietors, they at least invest in the restoration. And I'm sure they not just do it just well, I'm sure they restore it like very well. That's what I'm kind of at least I'm kind of okay. At least they restore it because otherwise many of these houses would have been long gone. So I guess it's better than nothing. Anyway, so you may be wondering, okay, but who are all those architects who built those whimsical buildings? Well, one of them is clearly Robert Friedrich Meltzer, and you may have heard this name quite a number of times on my tours because Meltzer was a big German family that had been living in Russia from the early 19th century. And they were architects, engineers, furniture makers, um, an architect. Did I say architect? I'm not sure. Anyway, so Robert Friedrich Meltzer was one of the architects who built several buildings, so, for in the Stone Island. He also built a lot for the Romanovs. He designed a lot of interiors. He designed, by the way, this railing of and the fence of the Winter Palace, by the way. He designed the library for Nicholas II. This is Nicholas's library in the Winter Palace in the Hermitage. He built a lot for the nobles. As you know, the nobles lived in St. Petersburg and earned their millions in St. Petersburg. So Robert Meltzer built a lot for the nobles. So Meltzer was, I would say, in demand, and they left us with quite a number of buildings in the city. Well, and Robert Friedrich Meltzer, who clearly was a big fan of Art Nouveau, he brought Art Nouveau to St. Petersburg. I well, he for himself, for some reason, sorry, that's the photo from Schwartz building. I'm not sure. It's just I must have confused it somehow. Sorry, just disregard that. So he built for himself a house in this neo-Russian style, which was quite surprising, but beautiful. And do I have to say that this also happened to be, this also became one of the resort houses, one of the sanatoriums for, sorry, for the workers? Well, yes, it was. But what I did not expect to find was the photographs that were taken in the Meltzer's house before the revolution. I was sure they are not around, but I was wrong. So there were several photographs taken, and I was happy to find them in one of the books. And I mean, have a look at this interior. It looks exactly, like an old Russian style slash Art Nouveau. I mean, neo-Russian style, Art Nouveau, so very eclectic. Like this looks very Art Nouveau-ish to me. I mean, it is Art Nouveau as it is. So that was a one-of-a-kind building. Robert, thank you so much for the tips. Thank you. And I like that from the from the inside, it looks like the izba, like the log cabin, and they have this traditional, towels that decorated the walls. Also, they have a lot of this woodwork. That's lovely. Obviously, it's just photographs, like set up photographs, but it's just lovely to see at least some of the interiors. Now, um, one more house that is located. So as you can see, we are now passing by a canal. If you move a little bit from that side, there was a house that belonged to Anna Abramovna Soloveitchik. So she was the wife of a Jewish merchant. As I said, it was very common for the merchants to register the property on their wife's name. So Soloveitchik was a prominent business family, Jewish family in Saint Petersburg. There is not much information about the Soloveitchik themselves, but their descendants live in Israel, they live in the States. I don't know if there's any information whatsoever regarding that house. Well, but what we know that Anna Abramovna was a patron of several charity um, canteens, so kosher canteens, kosher foods for the needed, and she also was one of the donors of a big charity fund, that supported the art organizations, kind of a trade schools for the Jewish kids. Well, these are the photos of the Soloveitchik house after its restoration. It also happens to be somebody's private residence. However, I found the photos online and of the old building. So the old building looked a little less opulent and a little smaller, and it became the orphanage. After the revolution, it became an orphanage. So the kids lived in this house. That's why you can see a lot of toys there. So you see clearly some, old interiors, and in them were placed kids with the toys, bunk beds, and everything. Quite special. So you see, that's how the house originally looked. And there wasn't this tall fence. You could see quite a lot. And now with that fence, not much you can see at all. So yes. Now that they even now you can't even check the name of the proprietor because it's now considered a classified information because of all those investigations carried out by Russian opposition journalists. So it's all just classified and there's no information whatsoever, but it belongs to someone clearly, I would say, very much connected to the elite, obviously. I like the Soviet period photo. These ladies elegantly dressed. I believe this is the 1950s when the photo was taken. Um, they just enjoy themselves in winter. Just that, Soviet women. Yeah, anyway, I don't like the way this house has been restored, to be honest. I like the way it looked before the changes. So this is the photo taken in the 80s. It is from somebody's private collection. It looked a lot more wild, and I love the photo taken by the fireplace. So the fireplace is clearly historic, and we know that it was designed in one of the Finnish workshops. And Finland was part of Russian Empire, so it makes sense. I found the photograph of this fireplace in modern times. I'm not sure when the photo was taken, but the fireplace, at least at the point where the photo was taken, the fireplace was still there, but it doesn't look like a functioning one. At least, at least they have the fireplace. Yeah, but that's it. So, and as we move further, you can see on the other side of the canal, by the way, the canal itself, it's just, I mean, it looks absolutely gorgeous. A lot of artists come here for plein air sessions. A lot of students from the Academy of Fine Arts come here. I mean, it looked very poetic. It still looks poetic, what can I say? And here in this photograph, it was taken before the revolution. You can see the Soloveitchik house from behind the trees. And well, this photo is taken from approximately the area that, well, now Oleg is passing by, but I'm not entirely sure where it was taken. And yes, you could just take a boat and, well, just paddles and enjoy yourself. Do I have to say that the Stone Island was a popular place for dating? It was ideal for dating, I would say. Ideal, absolutely. Okay. So now, as well, Oleg has approached this kind of a crossroad of two canals. So to the right hand side from the canal, to the right hand side in the photo, you can see some sort of a construction. It has like metal ribs. So this is the orchard that used to be the house of Yeliseyev family. We spoke about this house when we passed by it from a different side. But so what I'm really amazed is that this photo was taken in 2000s, and it still had this big greenhouse from the Yeliseyev family. Now it's gone because they built that top-notch, super fancy, super expensive residential complex, which looks ridiculous because they basically try to mimic the your classic architecture, but it looks ridiculous because you can clearly see it's, I don't know, I mean, it doesn't look like an old building. It doesn't look like the 18th century palace. It doesn't look, maybe because it looks too bad. It doesn't look even good enough to look like a Stalin Empire style. Anyway, so there is no access to that building. And even if I had $100 million, and even if I had $100 million, I would not be able to buy an apartment in this house because I have to be a member of the club, like the club, like the party, you see? Anyway, so but obviously I don't want to live in this ugly building, but it is known, for like 10 room apartments. I don't know, skyrocket um prices. That's kind of that it's not really a big problem for these people, obviously. So anyway, and we are actually wrapping up very soon. What I just want to show you is just some nice photos from the Soviet period. Well, for example, this was part of some estate, which is no longer there. But this house survived. It was just one of the service buildings, and now it's part of another residential complex. You must have noticed the fancy car just passing by. Was it a Maybach? I don't know. So this video was filmed in September 2025. So, yeah, and in the meantime, I'm thinking about what's going on in Ukraine, and it's like, goodness gracious. Anyway, so not all these people support the current regime. Also, I always try to think about it, but a lot obviously too complacent. Anyway, so back to the Soviet times. So that green area is just, a park. And there used to be in the Soviet time, there was turn down the volume, please. So in the Soviet times, it was kind of a small, park there. It used to have this wooden construction. I haven't been able to find any information. Maybe it was just a pavilion. It must have been built before the revolution. well, because it looked so terrible in the Soviet time. So it looks like it's something that had just been dilapidating for decades at least. And it was called like a quiet, uh, what do you call it? Like a quiet relaxation park. Interesting name for a park, but yeah, it was a name, Тихий отдых in Russian it sounds. I found some photos of that area, photos from the 1970s. Well, apparently there was a flood and the water actually rose pretty high that year. So this is not so bad. I mean, it's just okay. Now this lady is passing by that the pavilion, but from here, what you can see, the water level is pretty alarming, I would say. Like like really, really bad. I like this photo because you can see the Soviet pram. It never turned. I mean, it's wheels. I know that that's how it was back in the, in the 60s and 70s, but well, it was just, I mean, the wheels never turned, so you had to turn around yourself because otherwise you wouldn't be able to turn anyway. But this woman is seems well happy with the newborn, enjoying herself, and that's what actually many people have been doing. So the Stone Island is, well, it claims to be a very quiet island. There isn't a single food store. There are no food stores there at all, so it's only the place for living. There are several children facilities. There is a kindergarten. There are two private schools there, and there are also a couple of hospitals. And right now we are we are passing by, and I'm kind of doing it on a high speed mode. I'm just zooming past this, territory. It belongs to an oncological center, an oncology center. The oncology center opened in 1950s, and this yellow building, it's one of the buildings. It has quite a big territory, by the way. There are like I believe 5 or 6 different blocks, and well, I mean it's one of the best oncology clinics in St. Petersburg and in Russia. So and it happens to be located in a lovely building. Originally, the house was much smaller, but it was rebuilt to become an orphanage in the early 1900s. But for some reason, that plan didn't work, and the project was unfinished. So then, in the early Soviet period, the territory was developed, and since well, for some time it was another orphanage. It was several other facilities located in the Soviet period, and then after the war in 1950s, it was decided to open an oncology clinic and oncology a like research facility basically, but it's also a hospital there. For some time in the Soviet period, it was the agricultural school as well, like agricultural research facility, and then, well, and then the oncology clinic. Just some photos, a lovely building. Luckily, I have never been inside. And just to wrap it up on, I would say, quite an unusual mode, just would like to share with you some photos that I found online from this research facility. It's like the tools, the equipment they had back in the 1950s when the photos were taken. It doesn't look top notch to me, but this facility claimed to have had quite good track record. And but what can I say? I mean, um, yes. So this is basically where we are wrapping this up with the Stone Island. However, as I said, we are not done with the islands because there are a couple more. There are some also, some architecture to see. And well, I thought to also include some photographs of the interiors of the oncology center. These are not my photographs. I found them online and they were taken, I believe, in 2000, early 2000. So basically, this is it. So now we have completed the circle. And if we continue walking, just basically cross this round shaped lawn, we will find ourselves by the Stone Island Bridge. And this is how the circle will be complete. So that's basically it. So I know that there are some other tours that some of you would like to catch up with. So let's finally have, well, let's wrap it up here. And the next tour, which I schedule shortly, we will actually start from this spot. So if we stop here by the traffic light, so to the right, you will already see the stone bridge. Okay, so now let me turn the chat back on. There you go. So for those who joined us a little later, let me just quickly fill you in about what's going to happen next. So in 90 minutes from now, I'll be happy to see you in Tbilisi. I will be happy to see you anywhere anyway. But this time, Tbilisi, we are heading to the on a pre-recorded tour of a beautiful, opulent palace that belongs to the Oldenburg family, who were related to the Romanovs, like very close relatives of the Romanovs. And some of the Romanovs on the throne actually were related to the Oldenburgs. So it was like I would say it's clearly a royal palace sorry, not in Saint Petersburg, in Tbilisi. So the link is over there on the chat. And then, just as usual, I'm taking you to Alexandra Peterhof residence for tomorrow. A lot of calories for the chocolate festival in the botanical garden. Then Misha's given a talk about Nikolai Gogol. I'll be there too for sure. A Ukrainian-born artist, writer, sorry. And then the Temple Mount in Jerusalem for a lot more stories, fascinating stories. Trust me, fascinating stories. Also connected a lot, with the story of Jesus and Jesus's last hours in Jerusalem before crucifixion. So it's quite important. And there are some tours already scheduled for the upcoming weekend. A lot of Christmas tours, a lot of Christmas markets are coming your way, such as the one on Saturday. We're going to see the Christmas market on the top of the city. Okay, thank you so much. Hi, Marilyn. I didn't see you join. Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. I will see you in 90 minutes from now in the Romanov Palace in Tbilisi. And it's more than just the Romanovs that I will be talking about. It's a lot more because we get ready to see some Georgian art, some European art from the private collection of the Georgian nobility, and a lot more, honestly. I thought just one episode would be enough, but I was wrong. Okay, I think this is a good enough teaser. Let's put it on hold here. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. You have all the links. You could buy me a coffee. You could send me PayPal donation. And on my website, there are a lot more tours to book if you're interested. And on YouTube, you will be able to find this recording, the recording as of the previous weekend, and a lot more is still there and will be. Thank you for everything, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.